Check. Well, continuing along, I was looking at Yo-Yo Shinari's sketchbook and thinking a little bit about his drawing technique, which I can't really show you an example of it at the moment, but what I find, and obviously Yo is an artist in the anime space, but what you find about his approach is that it's very loose and fluid, and so I'm just kind of bringing that sensibility a little bit here to Futurama. So in other words, and you got to remember too, when these guys are doing, I'm going to turn the locator back off for the moment. It's quite useful during inking, but not so much during sketching in a concept. So I'm just looking at a reference image and saying, let's just get a couple poses here of Zap and Kif. It's interesting, in the reference image you can see certain continuities, like from Kif's lip you cross over to here and it actually kind of delineates where his ear is. So anyway, what I was saying about Yo and his work, because they're working on paper for the most part still. I don't know if they are now. Now I'm referring really to some behind the scenes videos I've seen for shows like either Gurren Lagann, Little Witch Academia, or Kill la Kill. So these behind the scenes videos were done quite a few years ago, actually. So whether Yo Shinari and the Trigger Studio crew has gone to an all-digital workflow, I wouldn't have a clue. You would think they would, but boy, oh boy, I tell you, the Japanese anime industry has certainly clung to old-school production techniques much longer than one might think they would have, since obviously an all-digital workflow has been pretty much viable for quite a few years now, ever since the Wacom Cintiq came out. So we're talking more than 10 years. Okay, so this is just kind of an interesting bit. Now my reference material, I'm actually having to scan through it because Kif, tell you what I'll do just to save time, I'm going to just pull up a still. What I'm looking for is Kif. The problem is that the image that I was looking at, Kif had goggles on, so you don't actually see his eyes. So looks like they're pretty much this, and they do pop out from his head just a little bit. And interestingly, sometimes his eyes are dots and sometimes they're sort of slits. I'm going to split the difference here. And okay, so back to Yo-Yo Shinari. This way of working that's very sketchy and fluid that you see in his art. Let me see if I have the Yo's sketchbook here somewhere on file. So bear with me for half a second here while I look in my backups, and if anything it would probably be on my laptop. Here we go. Okay, yeah, so this is what I was talking about, Yo-Yo Shinari's sketchbook. If you look at his anatomy, you see a fairly, as I say, fluid, sketchy sort of approach. Yeah, you definitely see it here. It's actually more, I don't know what the word is for it, but it's a little more loopy than I prefer. But it does seem to lend itself well to fluid action, and what I was getting at with discussing the fact that they work on paper is it lends itself well to sketching very loosely, and then when you come in with the pencil, and I'll go ahead and turn this back on now because this is actually going to be useful. You come in with the real firm, clean line, and I suppose when you're scanning that into the computer, it would be, it would allow you to have pretty clean line art, for coloring. So, as I say, the quote-unquote inking is still done, at least per the behind-the-scenes material I looked at, still done with pencils, actually. Now, like I said, maybe that's changed. Maybe it's more of an all-digital workflow. At this point, you'd think so. Now, of course, there are productions that were done a long time ago that were... Okay, I better check that. That's a little iffy. Yeah, that's not quite acceptable. Sorry about that, guys. And I would actually have to say this is not quite right either. He's got a little bit more of a, what would you call it? Let's call it a floopy doop. And actually, in truth, Kif's ears are a little more almost pointed looking. That's better. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is, using the locator, I'm going to see if I can get a smoother line here now. I want to get this nicely rounded. Okay, that's better. Yeah, don't know about that either. Okay. Oh, I forgot his nostrils. Boink. So the key thing with the locator is you have to find your spot with the locator, lift your tablet or your stylus off the screen, and then drop it back down. Otherwise, you get all this kind of stuff going on where you can't get to your spot. But all in all, works pretty well. Okay, so back to Zap. Definitely having fun with Zap, and I'm going to actually pull up a still of Zap as well. Because, again, in this case, he's got sunglasses on, and that's fine. We're going to just kind of go with that. Boop. Even though in the show, okay, there's kind of a problem. Well, let's just fix it. In the show, will Zap be wearing sunglasses? Not determined, but not completely ridiculous to think that he might. Okay, so that actually, yeah, so he's got these quite official looking wingdingers on his costume. And let's go ahead and... So the thing I notice here is that when you zoomed in farther, the tolerances of the... Whoa, that was not supposed to happen. Of the stylus driver seems to be a little more forgiving. In other words, if you're drawing up closer, the lines seem to be a little bit more controlled. And so that's how that would go right there. Okay, so now this is, again, kind of an interesting exercise. Let's go ahead and close the locator. This is a standard raster level, so it's a little risky behavior I'm engaging in here. But this drawing is basically just an experiment anyway. And if it turns out to, if it goes well, we could definitely use this drawing of Zap in the show. Although we'd probably have to shrink him down. And Kif as well. Kif is actually a little too large. A little bit of a scaling issue. So he'd probably be more like that. Okay, so what I was kind of getting at is curious whether a filling operation is even viable in a raster level. So let's call this the blue line, and then what I'm going to do is make a copy. Control C, Control V. All right. So now what I'm curious about is, let's save all. Let's see if this works the way the toonz raster levels work. So in other words, if I delete this, oh, it's not possible. Okay, well, that's that. Okay, excuse me. Let me see. On a raster level, it appears that the paintbrush isn't usable. So yeah, I mean, I guess this kind of goes to show that at the end of the day, it probably would have been wiser to just do this as a standard raster level, not a, or I'm sorry, as a toonz raster level, not a standard raster level. Okay, that's fine. Whoa, that was not supposed to happen. Let me just kind of see what's going on here. Okay, that's interesting. For some reason, the fill tool is trying to fill. Okay, yeah, it appears something very, very bad is going on. So I'm going to save all and close Opentoonz and reopen it. Because what appears to be happening is it's almost like the even though my stylus is not down on the screen and I do not have any mouse buttons pressed, it's like it's locked in draw mode. So just to check this, I'm going to open up my paint real quick and just make sure it's not a make sure it was an Opentoonz issue, not a driver issue. And the way I'll do that is by just doodling. Interesting. Boom, boom, boom. Boom, boom, boom. Okay. Seems that it was probably an Opentoonz issue, but let's find out. Sip of my coffee. It is 9:38 in the morning. That means it's a great time for coffee. Hello, Opentoonz. Any old time that you want to run, I would really greatly appreciate it. Oh, there you are. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to make a duplicate of that that frame and see what we got here. Okay, yeah, everything looks pretty good. So there's basically two things I want to fiddle around with here and work with. One is, what about converting this to a toonz raster level, so I have a little more control over the palette and whatnot. Is that possible? Well, I would think so. Let's just see. Probably level convert. Okay, I can convert it to vectors or toonz raster. Now, it might be somewhat seductive to think you'd want to convert it to vectors. I don't know. In practice, okay, so one question that occurs to me right now is, if I do a conversion on this level, is Opentoonz going to do the smart thing and say, mute this level but keep it? Or is it actually going to convert it and kill the raster level? I don't know. So for that reason, I'm going to create a clone of this level before I do anything else, just so I have a backup copy of it. So where is that in the menu? Haven't done that one in a while. Cells? Let's see, maybe I need to select the cells. Opentoonz a little winky this way. Yep, there it is. So you have to actually select the cells and then hit clone. And we'll just go like that. Okay, so interestingly, I'm not 100% clear on which one is the clone. So I'm going to hit Control Shift Alt L, which pulls up my level settings. Okay, this is the clone. Okay, so we'll call it clone. You'd think Opentoonz would be a little smarter about calling it, giving it an intelligent name in the column itself. But okay, no big deal. At least we can always pull up the level settings. So now what we want to do is we want to convert. Let's see what happens. Level, convert, and we're gonna, okay, that's interesting. If we grab the cells, we can convert to vectors or toonz raster. If we only grab the header of the column, then we can only convert to vectors? Interesting. Okay. Let's convert to vectors. And we're gonna just let Opentoonz do the best it can with its default settings, because I don't have a clue which and the current selection is invalid. Okay, that's interesting. So what that suggests is if you want to do a conversion, generally speaking, what you probably want to do is always grab cells, not headers. So let's do vectors first and see what happens. And well, it's really having to think about it, so that's good. The question now becomes, is Opentoonz going to keep the original level? And of course, another question is, how good of a job is it going to do of converting it to vectors? Okay, you know, it did the right thing. Here we can see that the original level is preserved, but that's a pretty ugly situation. So here, now this is interesting. Here, not so bad. So on the level, or on the frame, I should say, where I was really careful, this is not horrible, but it's not good enough either, would be my assessment. Okay, so that's fine. Let's just delete that level, and we want to remove empty columns. That's not actually what I want. I'm sorry. I haven't done this in a while. I've been lost in Krita land for so long that I've sort of forgotten a couple things in Opentoonz. But what I want is, I want the little window that is a list of all my levels so that I can delete unused levels. I want to clean out my scene a bit. And unfortunately, I do not remember where that is. Style editor palette. So let's just go down the list. As always, guys, sorry to make you sit through it, but XSheet, timeline, level strip. That's interesting. Oh, okay, yeah. So that's this. Message center, change or cleanup settings. Batch servers. Okay, guys, so if you scene-cast, that's what it is. No, it isn't cast. Darn it. Oh wait, maybe it is. Cast. Remove all unused levels. Okay, so we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 levels here, 5 levels here. Everything's looking good. Okay. So now what we want to do is grab the header, XSheet, or I'm sorry, level, convert, and what we want to, okay, it only converts it to vectors. Sorry, my bad, I had it backwards. That's one of those dyslexia things. You always want to grab the cells. This only works with vector levels. Okay, interesting. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit the B key and boop. So now I have a level. I am very curious what happens if I just grab this stuff and copy from one to the other. So, you know, you can get into using cleanup settings and all this kind of stuff, but I am definitely just kind of curious here how do you get from a raster level to a toonz raster level? How do you make that conversion safely? May not be so simple. And it doesn't really appear there's a way to, at least, you know, at a glance, I'm not seeing where there's a simple way to erase just one color, for example. Like, let's just get rid of the blue. If I hit the eraser, normal, let's see here. Okay, got it. Okay, so I'm going to quit belaboring it. Darren T's probably watching this video, and Darren, you probably know what is the quick and dirty way to get from a raster level to a toonz raster. It's kind of an important point to figure out too, because what if, for example, I did some basic art, designed the characters, whatever, maybe brought a character model sheet that was maybe a ping that was designed in Krita, and I want to just drag it into Opentoonz, but I want to have the flexibility to modify some of the colors. I guess the other thing we could go ahead and try, since we're here and we're just kind of thinking about it, is let's go to the cleanup settings. Okay, that's interesting. So this is a 1280 by 720 level. I want to use the current level setting. There we go. That solves that. Line processing. Let's go color. Okay, so this is where you would get into actually delineating. I haven't done this in a while, so let's just do it this way. We'll create red, blue, and black, and just leave it there. And I don't know how well Opentoonz remembers these settings, so I'm just going to leave them sit where they are, and then go to scan and clean up, and hit clean up and see what happens. Okay, so it appears to be trying to do it. It looks like let's do clean up all. Okay, that was fast, which is kind of interesting. Okay, so it looks like what it did, yeah, looks like what it did was, let's delete this level, is it converted it to a toonz raster level. Here's the colors I had picked. And then there's 10 trillion other colors, so that's fine. But yeah, it converted it. So how does that help us? Well, for one thing, you'll see here, now the different colors are editable or erasable or whatever. Another thing we can do is we could, if I'm correct about this, let me see. I think we can hit the paintbrush tool, and we're going to color lines black. Okay? So now if I go like this, it's actually going to take the blue lines, some of which I want to keep, and just turn them black. So that's kind of useful too, that whole cleanup process. Not too shabby. I really want to make this bigger. So let's just go ahead and do that. Now, obviously, another way you could do this, in case you're wondering, is you could take the fill tool in rectangle mode, and we say, well, we want to fill in lines and we want to turn them all black. So just as an example of what we want to do. And then all we got to do is just select the whole frame. Boop! Everything gets turned black. Right? So now back here, let's try. So here's the blue. And what we wanted to experiment with here is about erasing just the selected color. So I'm going to go selective. I think that's how you do this. Yeah. Go selective. Now it only is going to erase the blue. So that's useful too. However, I didn't, if the truth be known, actually want to do that. Now, look at that. That's a major, major screw up on the part of Opentoonz. What Opentoonz just did is it does not remember my undo steps, so I can't undo that erasing that I just did, which is a little bit ridiculous. When I hit undo, it actually started reinserting the levels I had deleted and whatnot. So its concept, even here in version 1.4, its concept of undo history is, shall we say, questionable. Usually when I see things like that, that tells me that the developers don't kick around the edges of the software that much. And so what you wind up with is, let me just go ahead and create a frame here, and I'll show you what I'm talking about. So when you're a developer, you're thinking about these different functionalities. When you're a user, what happens is, let me see how I can draw this. This is kind of what happens is that, oh man, it's still doing it. It's got no concept of undoing my drawing. Wow. Okay, that is really, really uncool. Version 1.4. Holy crow. If you draw something and hit undo, no undo operations available. Well, what I was trying to say is that as a user, okay, so there's this overlap, right? What can happen in practice is that some of the most important functionality is here. I don't know if that's a great illustration of what I'm talking about. So in other words, what the developers think is important and what is actually important to you as a user aren't necessarily the same. So what happens is the developers give all kinds of attention, usually to the sexiest features that seem useful, but a lot of times it's the mundane aspects of the software that actually come up over and over and over again in practice. You see this all the time, and what that means is that the functionality that is kind of at the edges but yet is hugely important oftentimes gets ignored. That's really the upshot of the story. So see, this is cool. Being in selective mode, it only erases the color that I'm currently fiddling with. But in fact, what I want to do is erase everything. And I'm kind of doing it the stupid way. It would make more sense to just go rectangular and go boop, gone. Okay, let's get back to work. So I have to say that this conversion was pretty impressive. And I am going to do selective here just to get rid of all the blue. Okay, coming back here with Kif. So now it's a question of fills and colors, and actually this color is not too far away from Zap's hello? I don't want, I want areas now. Boom. Boom, boom, boom. Okay, that's a little iffy. Okay, so now looking at the reference image, I'm gonna say Zap's gold color needs to be a little darker. Now, what I'm gonna do here is color that, and then I'm gonna hit the R key to sample that color, and then just make it a little darker. So that pretty much takes care of that. Then let's go ahead and just grab this orange for fun. Fill operation. Boom, boom. Oh, didn't mean to. Okay, so now fill depth, our maximum is 7. I'm going to go ahead and hit the shift key. Yeah, that strengthens the fill depth. The truth of the matter is, probably my least fill depth should be up there. Let's see what happens here. It doesn't seem to matter, so let's take a closer look. In this case, I may have to kind of do this the hard way, which is to go into freehand mode, and so let's just select this. That looks pretty good. And now his costume is actually more burgundy. Okay, and now just for fun, I'm going to do the same thing I did before to clean that up. And whoa, that's interesting. No undo operations. Oh my goodness. I think I'm going to close and reopen. I'm going to assume this is a bug. Most of the time, what you find is if Opentoonz is really, really stupid, it's usually that things have just gotten discombobulated in memory, and if you rerun the program, it tends to, everything starts working again. That's not always the case, but we can find out really fast by just hitting the B key, drawing a line, and then hitting Z, and see that did an undo operation. So that's what we expected. Cool. So that's kind of one of the saving graces of Opentoonz, is that in practice, usually stupid, crashy, icky stuff is not actually as disastrous as it appears to be at first glance. Now, interestingly, Zap's hair is almost the same color as his almost the same color as his trim on his uniform. So now we'll take that, and what we'll do is we'll just brighten it up a little bit. Okay, so now I haven't gotten rid of all the blue. Let's grab this color, go into eraser mode, rectangular, selective. I just want to get rid of all the blue completely because I'm still seeing little remnants of it. Okay, cool. That's what we wanted. All right. Now, File, Save All. So now there is another issue that I'm detecting here, which is, let's go to the raster level here. It should be nothing, right? And what I'm seeing now is that, as far as I can tell, it appears that we have lost tablet pressure, which is a bit silly. I better start naming these. Zap, uniform, Zap, trim, shadow, Zap hair, Zap, uniform, trim. Okay. Zap, skin. Now later we'll pull in some reference material. Okay. Got a little issue there. Okay, let's see what happens if we just... Oh, wait. We don't want to do lines. We want to do areas. Okay, so we got that. Let's fill it. Now I'm going to put the minimum at 10 just to see what happens. Okay, that looks pretty good. That looks pretty good. I think that's what we want. Okay. Boom, boom, boom. So now what we can do is, what you see with Zap is he's one of these guys that's perpetually got a tan. So there's a little bit of an orangey character to his skin. Something like that. Okay. File. Save all, baby. Alright. What about Kif? Well, Kif, as we know, is kind of sort of green. So let's go Kif skin. Boom. Let's... Uh-oh, we got a little leak going on. Okay. So what I normally do is I hit the paintbrush just to go in and just basically block any leak spots. I think I got it. Yep, I got it. So now Kif's skin is actually green, and it's kind of a diffuse green. Something like that. It appears that we'll just call this white. Kind of for whites of the eyes. And make it just a little off. And okay, cool. So now what we need to do is actually make a duplicate of this. Okay. And in this drawing, we're going to erase. Okay, this should be interesting. Let's use normal lines. See what happens here. Okay, that makes sense. Selective. So I want to do just this. Okay. Not too horrid. However, here you can see, I better save all. You can see the problem that we had before. It's got pressure on. Let's see what happens if we do this. Okay. Control Z. Let's turn on pressure. And nothing happens. Okay, so save all. Let's kill this. Let's do the same thing we did before. That doesn't happen very often, I gotta tell you. Once in a blue moon it'll happen in Krita. Very rarely in Opentoonz. Not quite sure what's going on here, but the question I have is, do we have pressure? And we don't. We have no pressure. So that tells me that, boy, that's really strange, because normally it's only Krita that is able to basically subvert the driver and cause tablet pressure to be destroyed. It's not a... I mean, the drivers on this tablet are extremely good, very reliable, and it's really, really rare and difficult to break them. And I have never seen Opentoonz do it, but since I haven't used Krita here, I can only gather that something wacky is going on in Opentoonz. And I'm just going to make that slightly yellow just so we can kind of tell. Okay, so the solution to the problem is quite simple at the moment. I mean, obviously the real solution is to reboot the computer. But what I'm going to do is I'm just going to change my max to 2. For Futurama, well, I'm going to change that to 3 actually. For Futurama, Um, we can get away with this because we want very simplified simplified line art. Okay, so now hitting the G key, which is not going to be the same hotkey as it is for you, I expect. Actually, before I do that, sorry about that. Let's go back here. Let's get this border in here so we're not fighting these edges, and let's go ahead and redraw those lines. Okay, so now I'm sampling and I'm going to the fill operation, and probably for now we should be in freehand mode so we can kind of grab these areas. We'll forgive what just happened. Go to Zap Hair, and we'll just... Okay. Now, obviously, we want to erase that one little glitch, and we only want to erase lines. So that made it easy. Okay, so now, and by the way, that line really should not be there. Yes and no. Let's hit undo. This is actually supposed to run up all the way to the nose. However, there's still a problem. I made that too high. That's better. Okay, and Zap's eyes are pretty much just dots. Okay, so we'll fill that. Probably fill's not the right term to use, but okay, so now what we're going to do is catch the eyes, and then we'll go ahead and turn this color white again. And not bad. Not bad. One could argue that his eyes should be a little lower on his skull. I think what I'm going to do is I'm probably going to break some things with what I'm about to do, but that's okay. Let me see what happens if we... Yep, let's do that. Okay, so that means we got to do a little bit of fixie-uppy. And actually, before going too far with it, let's consider that's not too bad. Yeah, so as you can see in animation, truth be told, having pressure sensitivity is not that important most of the time, actually. Really isn't. Okay, that's better. Okay, so obviously one could certainly argue that we got the same situation here. And I don't necessarily want this to be stone perfect, because again, this is a bit of an experiment. Let's see what happens if we Yeah, I actually went a little bit too far. That's okay. We'll just fix it. Again, doesn't have to be perfect, but okay. It's about the only time I ever use onion skins. It's for stuff like that. Okay, so not a bad start. If we go back to our go back to our animatic, what we see here. Boy, do I still have the clone? Okay, now that's not good. Well, that's typical me. In the process of doing all this stuff, I inadvertently deleted the cloned layer, so I don't have the original raster level drawing. Now I can still get it off the disk, so no big deal. In fact, I probably should. How would we do that? Let's figure that out right this instant. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the Anime Futurama folder, and I'm going to Extras, and here is the pencil test. Okay, so if you ever want to get it back, just boop, draw it in there, and there it is. So, and I'm going to just slide it down here below, so just so we have it as a reference. Okay, so now I'm going to go to the X sheet view, and you can see what the problem is. This actually needs to be down here. And with that, save all. So that's another good thing about Opentoonz is even if you do like delete something, it's actually not gone. It's still there on the hard drive. You just drag it right in, and you're back in business. So in this case, I just wanted to kind of get a reference here for Zap, because in this drawing, which I'm about to delete, I'm going to just see if we can do it this way. Yep. I'm going to drag this right in here, because you can do that. You can mix drawing types and levels. Okay. And I can move this. Let's insert this. And then I'm going to take Zap and Kif and move them over to here. And what that gives you the ability to do, in this case, is overlay them. And then just, you know, for example, we could use the animation tool to scale this down. Whoops. And looks to me like we probably want to scale it even a little bit more. But okay, so then that gives us the ability to have Zap and Kif walk up. Obviously, I've reversed their position to what it was in the original drawing, because Kif was on the other side of him. That's actually fairly easy to remedy by just selecting him and moving him around. The downside to all this is if I did in fact want to use these images in this level, then I need to go ahead and resize the frame. Okay, is there a better way? There might be. Let's try this. Let's first of all save everything. Now let's hit undo a few times. Okay, let's drag this back down here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to drag this here and hit the D key and make a clone. Okay, and I'm going to pull the clone up here. And now instead of using the animate tool, I'm going to use the selection tool to actually shrink the doodle material. And then that way we still have the size of the total frame that we can use to draw the rest of them back in. Now, is that going to be problematic? Let's find out. We hit return, or let's hit the B key. Okay, look at that. As you can see, it definitely is a problem. Okay, so let's undo that. And let's consider whether there is a bit of a fix for that. And I'm in, it doesn't say no anti-aliasing. So let's do no anti-aliasing and see what happens. Let's just do no anti-aliasing. Yeah, it doesn't really work. So it doesn't do the most brilliant job ever of scaling down. So what I thought I could do, I really can't do. See, and isn't it interesting though, if you think about it, you know, the scale tool, animate tool, look at that, preserves the original pixel data, if you will, perfectly. So really the only solution here, if we want to use this drawing and not have to redraw it, would be to make the canvas for this level much larger. We'd actually basically want to stretch it down to about 3 times. And the main problem with that, truthfully, is that this frame is actually taken from this level. So if we resize this frame, it's going to resize everything, which suggests to me that for our purposes, what we probably want to do is just clone this. Let's just clone this and call this Zap and Kif. Okay. All right, so now, again, we need to learn here. Okay, so mental note, when Opentoonz clones a layer or clones cells, it adds the clone into the right of the previous one. Now that's an interesting thing to take note of, because if you just insert a level, like right now if I hit the insert key, it's always inserted to the left, not the right. So the behavior is not necessarily mega consistent. So those are things, that's why when I stop and say, okay, let's make a mental note, that's why. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is solve this last problem, and then we're going to call it a day for the moment. What we're going to do is on this clone level, let's make sure I've got this right. Yep, this is the clone. And I believe on cells, no, level, canvas size. Okay, what I'm going to do is I want to expand the height to about not quite triple. So I'm going to say 1800. Boom. Okay. So the only downside with that was that the resizing was centered. That could have been mitigated by using the anchor thing, but that's okay. What we'll do is we'll just select this and hit the shift key. Okay. Okay, that kind of sort of worked. Yeah, there we go. Right? Okay. Hit the B key again. Now we can hit the animate tool. Position these guys. We probably should put the center. So we're kind of committing to this at this point. We're kind of committing to using this level as the real Zap and Kif level, right? So we bring this up here, and there they are. Everything looks really good scaled. We got plenty of level real estate to draw the rest of their bodies, and then basically on this shot, these guys are just going to walk in, and Zap's going to start talking the way Zap loves to talk. All right, so with that, let's save our work and call it a day. And as you guys know, there will be more later.